My name is Ava. I'm 27. The last time I danced barefoot in the living room, my father laughed so hard he spilled beer on the couch. He called it my little circus act. My mom just muttered, "She's still pretending someone's watching." I learned to rehearse after midnight. No audience, no noise, just a cracked Bluetooth speaker and bruises I didn't tell anyone about. I worked double shifts at the diner, came home smelling like burnt oil and coffee grinds, pulled the table aside, rolled my ankle out, practiced till it screamed. This wasn't just a recital, it was an audition, a shot at the only dance conservatory that wouldn't ask for tuition, just blood, sweat, and survival. I didn't tell them about it. Not at first. I knew better. Hope was a trigger in our house. It made them mean, but I had to tell them eventually. The audition day was coming. I needed the car. The morning I told them Dad didn't even look up. Just took a long sip of beer and said, "So you think twirling around on your toes is a life plan?" Mom didn't even pause her texting. Maybe if she limps hard enough, they'll let her in out of pity. That was breakfast. I went to my room, pulled the dress from the back of the closet. Midnight blue, knee length, bought secondhand and hid in a grocery bag under my bed for weeks. It was the only thing in that house that hadn't been touched, mocked, or ruined. I put it on, slicked my hair into a bun, stood in the mirror and told myself I looked like someone with a future. Then I made the mistake of walking into the living room. Dad looked up, grinned. "Where do you think you're going dressed like that?" I said. "The audition." He said, "Not on those legs, you're not." Then he kicked mine out from under me. No warning, no wind-up, just one sharp move. My knees cracked the floor. My breath left my body. Mom didn't flinch, just sipped her coffee. "Guess crawling looks better on you," she said. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood up. I walked out the door. Every step was fire, but fire meant I was still alive. They thought they broke something. They were right. But it wasn't what they thought. It wasn't my knee. It was the last piece of me that needed them. I didn't have backup, no savings, no plan B. If the audition didn't work, I'd still be stuck bussing tables for men who called me sweetheart and didn't leave tips. I'd still come home to a house where dreams were punchlines, where silence was the only way to stay safe. This wasn't just a dance slot, it was an exit. A lifeline wrapped in music, and my body the only thing I had was failing me. My knee swelled fast. Each step to the community center felt like dragging a brick tied to my leg. But stopping wasn't an option. Not after what he did. Not after what she said. I walked past the mirror in the foyer. My dress was wrinkled now. My bun was loose. But my eyes, they didn't look scared. They looked like someone with nothing left to lose. Inside the center, the air was warm and buzzing. Moms held flower bouquets. Dads checked camera batteries. I limped past them, clutching my dance bag like a weapon. The woman at the check-in desk looked up. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Just tripped," I said. I lied because telling the truth would cost me the one thing they couldn't take my moment. My turn was last, the closer. I sat in the hallway listening to the music echo through the walls. Every beat a countdown, every cheer a reminder that the audience came for beauty, not bruises. My friend Delilah spotted me adjusting the makeshift wrap on my knee. "What happened?" she whispered. I didn't need to say much, just one word. "Home." She nodded. Her silence said she understood. We all had something we were dancing through. Some of us just hid it better. When they called my name, I walked on stage. The lights were blinding, the audience a blur of faces. But I saw them, back row, unsmiling, arms crossed, Mom on her phone, Dad already bored. I took position. The music started, and I danced. Every spin was agony, every lift a gamble, but the pain couldn't outshine the fire. The music soared, and so did I, if only in defiance. Halfway through, my leg buckled. A sharp gasp rippled through the room. I caught myself. I kept going. I gave them everything. At the end, I held my final pose even as my knee shook beneath me. The applause came. Not polite, loud, real. I bowed, swallowed my tears. From the back, I heard his voice. Guess the limp was part of the act. A few heads turned. Mom laughed. I stood there steady. Let them laugh. Let them try. They had no idea what they'd just lit inside me. I wasn't surprised he did it. The kick, the laugh, the look that said, "You deserved it." That's the thing about growing up like this. Nothing ever really shocks you, not when it comes from them. My dad was never a mystery. He was a storm in a beer can, loud, predictable, mean, but in small ways, unless you pushed back. Then he got creative. My mom was quieter, but she watched. She always watched. Said nothing. Did nothing. Sometimes worse than nothing. She handed him the matches, then blamed the fire on bad luck. I used to think she was a victim too. But victims don't smile when you fall. Don't laugh when you bleed. Maybe she started as one. Maybe she just liked the power more. We never hugged. Never said I love you, not once. But we said things with our eyes. They said, "Don't try too hard. Don't dream too big. Don't forget who you are." And who I was to them was a burden, a joke, something to control. They needed me to stay. Not because they loved me, but because someone had to be smaller than them. We lived in a small house with peeling paint and too many rules. The air smelled like old regrets and cheap cigarettes. The TV was always on. The door was always locked. It wasn't a home, it was a trap. But the worst part? You start thinking it's normal. You start believing maybe you really are the problem, that maybe if you smiled more, stayed quieter, didn't ask for things, they'd change. But they didn't. They got worse. And the more I tried to become someone else, someone better, someone worth loving, the more they pushed back. The dance was my secret rebellion, my one soft place. They hated it because it meant I had something that wasn't about them, something that could take me away. That recital wasn't just about college, it was about escape, about proving I could be more than their punching bag. And when they saw that dress, that confidence that maybe, just maybe, I could make it out, they made sure to remind me I couldn't. Because that's what control looks like. Not always chains. Sometimes it's just broken knees and laughter, and silence where love should be. After the recital, things got colder. Not louder. Colder. That's how they punished you when their fists weren't involved. They pretended you didn't exist. Or worse, acted like everything was fine. The next morning, Dad passed me the cereal like nothing had happened. Still limping, he said, pouring his beer. "Guess you'll have to give up that ballerina nonsense now." I didn't answer, didn't look at him. Mom glanced up from her phone. "There's always jobs at the diner. Might be all you're good for anyway." It wasn't new, but it stung different now. I'd danced through pain they couldn't imagine, and they still wanted me to believe I was nothing. That night, I wrapped my knee in ice, turned on the bedroom fan to drown them out, and stared at the scholarship judge's card on my desk. One call. That's all it would take. But I waited, because I knew if I called too soon, they'd find a way to take that too. I had to move smarter, quieter. At dinner a few days later, Dad asked how long I planned on limping around for attention. I said nothing. Just passed the salt. That silence, it rattled him. He was used to tears, fights, apologies. Not quiet resolve. That's when he started poking harder, mocking my walk, calling me cripple girl, laughing at the sound my knee made when I moved too fast. Mom joined in, said I should have fallen harder. Maybe it would have knocked some sense into me. I didn't flinch, not anymore. I became a wall. No reactions, no outbursts, just quiet calculations. Every cruel comment, they didn't see it, but I was keeping score. Not for revenge, not yet, for clarity. The more they pushed, the clearer it got. This wasn't a family, it was a cage, and I was already halfway out. I stopped telling them where I was going, stopped giving explanations, started hiding my dance shoes in a bag under the porch. I stopped asking for permission, because I wasn't theirs to manage anymore. One night, Dad tried to corner me in the hallway, said, "You think you're better than us now." I didn't answer, just looked him in the eye for a full 5 seconds, then walked past. That silence, it was louder than any scream, and he heard it. They both did, because that's when they started to get nervous. They didn't say it, but I saw it. They knew something was changing, and this time they couldn't stop it. It happened the night they had company over. 4 people from Dad's work. the kind of people he only pretended to respect, the kind of night Mom wore real earrings and made boxed wine look like a performance. I came out of my room dressed simply, clean neutral, no limp, no makeup, just enough presence to make them wonder what I was doing there. Dad raised his eyebrows. "Look who finally decided to join us," he said loud enough for the guests to hear. "Hope she doesn't start twirling again. Might blow her other knee out." Laughter at the table. Not cruel, just awkward. They didn't know the joke was built on bruises. I smiled slightly, sat down, ate in silence. Halfway through dinner, Dad leaned back in his chair, beer in hand. "So," he said, voice slick, "are you done with your little hobby yet? Or should we start looking into wheelchairs?" A polite chuckle passed around the table. I let it land, let it echo. Then I looked up, calm. "Actually, I said I got into a full scholarship program. I'm moving next week." Silence. Not just at the table inside the house. Like the walls sucked in the air. Mom's fork clinked against her plate. "A scholarship," she repeated, eyes narrowing. "For you!" "Yeah," I said. "They called me exceptional. Said they hadn't seen movement like mine in years." I let that hang for a beat, then reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. I passed it across the table to Dad. He didn't touch it. Inside, I said, "Is my acceptance letter," and an invitation to my first national competition. Front row seats, if you can afford them. The table stayed frozen. No one knew whether to smile or choke. Dad's face darkened. "You think this makes you better than us?" I didn't blink. "No, I said I know I am." That was it. That was the line, the fracture point. I stood, thanked their friends for dinner, and walked out. My bag was already packed, waiting at Leia's. I never looked back. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't explain. I knew if I gave them even one word, they'd twist it. And this time, I wasn't giving them anything, not even closure. The next morning, I woke up in Leia's guest room. Sunlight filtered through pale curtains. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just quiet. It felt foreign, like peace was something I had to earn. I checked my phone, 15 missed calls, 8 texts, all from Mom. They started angry. "Get back here now, you're embarrassing us." Then softer, "We're worried about you. At least tell us where you are." Then nothing. Silence was their final weapon. When the rage didn't work, they withdrew. Cut me off like I was the problem. But it was too late for guilt to work on me. Too late for softness. I had the judge's number saved under exit. I called her that same day. My voice didn't shake. "I'm ready for the private audition," I said. "Just tell me when and where." She didn't ask questions. She just said 2 towns over. Tuesday, Studio 3. No pressure. But there was pressure. All the pressure in the world. I rehearsed in Leia's garage. Bare floor, no mirrors. Just a cracked phone camera and a borrowed speaker. Every movement sharpened, every breath measured. Pain still flared in my knee, but it wasn't the loudest thing in the room anymore. Determination was. On Tuesday, I walked into the studio alone. No parents, no distractions, no second chance. The judge stood at the edge of the floor, clipboard in hand, face unreadable. "When you're ready," she said. The music played, and I danced. Not for survival, not even for revenge. I danced for clarity, for all the versions of me that had been told I was too much or not enough. I gave her everything. When the last note ended, I froze in my final pose. Silent, breathless. She didn't clap, just walked over slowly and said, "You're in." That was it. No questions about money, no conditions. Just a door opening. I left the studio that day without looking back. Because this wasn't about running anymore. It was about arriving. And for the first time in my life, someone powerful looked at me and didn't see broken, didn't see useless. She saw potential, and that changed everything. I didn't go home after the audition. I went straight back to Leia's where my suitcase still sat by the wall like a quiet promise. I opened it, took out the acceptance letter, read it again, just to be sure it was real. I was in. No more ifs. No more hoping someone would save me. I had saved myself. But getting out wasn't enough. Not for me. I needed them to know. Not just that I made it, but that they didn't break me. So I planned carefully, quietly. I became a ghost in my own house. Over the next week, I stopped reacting. No anger, no tears, just silence. And while they thought I was giving up, I was slipping away, piece by piece. I moved my belongings out slowly. Dance shoes, costumes, the envelope with the judge's card, even my childhood photo from the living room shelf. Gone, hidden, mine again. They didn't notice. They never did. They were too busy mocking me to realize I was leaving. Then came the night I was waiting for dinner with their friends, the important ones, the ones they desperately tried to impress. I dressed well, not flashy, not emotional, just enough to make them curious. At dinner, Dad started in right on cue, so he said, smirking, "Done with your little dance fantasy yet polite laughter." His friends unsure whether it was a joke or a warning. I smiled, reached into my purse, pulled out the invitation. "Actually, I said I've been accepted into a national competition. Full scholarship. I leave next week." Forks paused mid-air. The table froze. "Here's your invitation," I added, sliding it across. "Front row tickets, if you can afford them." I said it like a dare. Because that's what it was. They could come watch, but only if they paid, only if they earned it. Dad's mouth tightened. Mom's smile faltered. "You think you're better than us?" he muttered. I didn't blink. "I don't think it," I said. "I know it." Then I stood, thanked their guests for the meal, and walked out. Not running, not limping, just walking. Strong, silent, unapologetic. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need revenge. I had something better, proof. And they had front row seats to it. They didn't buy the tickets. I knew they wouldn't. It was never about watching me succeed. It was about making sure I never did. But they showed up anyway, standing in the back of the auditorium the night of the competition. No flowers, no seats, just shadows in the last row. I saw them as soon as I stepped on stage. Dad with his arms crossed, Mom pretending not to be uncomfortable. They thought they were still part of my story. They weren't. The music started. I moved, not for them, not for revenge, but to remind myself what it meant to take back the body they tried to break. Every turn was deliberate, every landing a statement. I didn't dance for forgiveness. I danced for finality. The standing ovation came before the last note even faded. And still, I didn't look at the crowd. I looked at them. Just them. Their faces pale, their mouths tight. No laughter this time, no smirks. Just smallness. It was the first time I'd seen fear in my father's eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of what he could no longer control. After the show, the judges offered interviews, photos, press. I skipped all of it, walked straight outside where the cold air hit my face like a reset button. They were waiting near the parking lot. "You didn't tell us you'd actually gotten in," Mom said, like it was some kind of betrayal. Guess it wasn't a waste after all. Dad didn't speak. His silence said more than words. I didn't respond. I pulled out my phone and held up a copy of the competition results. My name in bold. National finalist. Then I said clearly, "You don't get to be part of this." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around and walked away, left them standing in the dark like strangers. Because that's what they were now. People I used to know, people who had chances, and burned every single one. I never blocked them. That would have given them too much importance. Instead, I just let them watch from the outside. See my name in articles. See my face on flyers. See the life they swore I'd never have, and no, none of it included them. The days that followed weren't quiet, but they were finally mine. The scholarship program placed me in a dorm 3 states away, and for the first time in my life, I had a room with a door that locked from the inside. No yelling through the walls. No footsteps pacing the hallway like threats. Just the hum of morning light and the ache of muscles used to build something real. My knee still flared up some nights. The scar tissue remained a reminder. But it wasn't just injury anymore. It was history. It didn't define me. It informed me. Dance classes were brutal, competitive. unforgiving in a new way, but they didn't hurt like home. The critiques here were tools, not weapons. My professors saw me, not the bruises, not the limp. They saw control, presence, grit. One of them, a former principal dancer from New York, told me during our third week, "You don't move like you're trying to impress. You move like you've got something to prove." I smiled at that. Because it was true. I wasn't there to be liked. I was there to be free. And every time I hit the floor, I carved out space for the girl who used to rehearse in a tiny living room after midnight praying no one would hear her music. Slowly, I built a new rhythm, new rituals. Mornings with herbal tea instead of shouted orders. Evenings with roommates who asked if I wanted to join dinner, not if I'd earned it. I started journaling again, something I'd stopped doing back when every page felt like evidence someone could use against me. Now each entry was a reclaiming, of voice, of space, of self. I wrote letters I never sent. To my father about the way he taught me pain first and trust never. To my mother about the silence she chose. To the girl I used to be apologizing for not leaving sooner and thanking her for surviving long enough to make it out. That was the part they could never touch, the becoming. They'd spent years trying to break me into pieces small enough to hold, but now I was too wide, too tall, too loud in my quiet, too whole. I stopped waiting for an apology because I realized I didn't need one. Their failure to love me wasn't my flaw, and their choice not to change wasn't my responsibility. They could stay in their echo chamber of bitterness. I was done shrinking to fit. Every class, every performance, every breath wasn't just healing. It was reclamation. A life I built without their permission, without their names on it. Finally, I wasn't running from them. I was running toward me. I used to think healing would feel like revenge, like fireworks, like screaming, "Look at me now," and watching them flinch. But that was before I understood something deeper. True healing isn't loud. It's not explosive. It's quiet, steady. It's waking up in a room no one else has keys to. It's hearing your father's voice in your head and choosing not to listen. It's remembering what they did without letting it decide who you are. I stopped counting the days since I left, because the time before doesn't own me anymore. What matters now is who I've become. I dance not because I have to prove them wrong, but because the stage is the only place that ever felt like home. And now, finally, I get to live in that home. The last time I saw them was unplanned. I was back in town briefly for a regional performance. They came, uninvited, sat in the back again like ghosts trying to haunt something that had moved on without them. I didn't speak to them. I didn't need to. My presence was the confrontation, my joy the rebellion, my success the sentence. As the curtain fell and the applause echoed through the hall, I took one last glance toward their row. They looked tired, smaller, like people who'd missed something they'd never get back. And they had. They missed the chance to love someone extraordinary. They threw it away. Not because they couldn't see it, but because they were too afraid of what it would say about them if I rose beyond their control. So here's what I've learned. Some people need you to stay broken so they don't have to face their own cracks. Some people will cut your legs out from under you and call it discipline. Others will laugh while you bleed and call it tough love. But the truth is, none of that is love. Love doesn't shatter. Love doesn't silence. Love doesn't fear your freedom. To anyone still in the house, they can't breathe in. I see you. To the ones practicing alone, hiding your dreams in desk drawers and under beds. Keep going. Pack your bag. Say nothing. Let them underestimate you. And then leave without looking back. Because one day they'll be in the audience. But the story won't be theirs anymore. It'll be yours.